The US government just slammed shut. That means thousands of workers across the country are either sent home or forced to work without pay. For the people inside those agencies, everything just stopped. What does a government shutdown actually mean? Well, take the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the team that tracks jobs and prices to figure out how the economy's doing. Normally, about 2,000 people work there. Right now, guess how many are on duty? 1. The acting commissioner. That's it. It's like having a restaurant where only the manager shows up, but the cooks, servers, and dishwashers all stay home. And here's the kicker. That big monthly jobs report everyone waits for, the one that tells us whether more people are getting hired or losing jobs, yeah, that's probably not coming out this Friday. The people who make those reports aren't at work. Shutdowns aren't exactly new. Since 1978, the US government has shut down 20 times. That's more than once every 2 years. Most of them last about a week, but remember the last big one during Trump's first term? That dragged on for 34 days. Over a month, all because of a fight about building a wall on the border with Mexico. So why does this keep happening? Well, it all comes down to one thing: money. Every year, Congress has to pass funding bills to keep the government running. Think of it like setting an allowance, except instead of pocket change, we're actually talking billions of dollars that decide how the entire country operates. Right now, Congress is arguing over something called a continuing resolution. That's just a fancy way of saying, let's keep the lights on until November 21st while we figure all this out. But passing it isn't simple. In the Senate, you need 60 votes. Republicans have 53. That means they need at least 8 Democrats to say yes. And one Republican senator, Rand Paul, already said no, so now those Democrat votes are more important than ever. Back in March, Democratic leader Chuck Schumer helped Trump's team pass one of these bills, and people in his own party weren't happy. So now Democrats are under pressure to cave in again. Meanwhile, Trump's team is playing a completely different game. Usually when shutdowns end, everyone just goes back to work, but this time, the White House told government agencies to make lists of workers they could just fire permanently. Not furlough, fire. Gone for good. They want to target people who work on programs the administration doesn't support. That's never happened before. Analysts like Preston Brashers from the Heritage Foundation say Democrats see this as a rare moment to push back, one of the few times they still have leverage, since they don't control the House, the Senate, or the White House. But Trump's team has been smart about this. Economist Brian Westbury says they've diluted the Democrats' leverage. Basically, they've forced Democrats to pick. Do they fight to protect government workers, or do they fight for more funding? It's hard to do both. So what do Democrats actually want? The biggest fight is about health insurance. During COVID, the government created special subsidies to help people buy health coverage through Obamacare. About 4 million Americans still use those subsidies, mostly people who don't get insurance through their jobs, but those subsidies are set to expire next year. Democrats want to keep them going, Republicans say no, claiming the money is going to people who aren't supposed to be in the country, and Democrats say that's not true. Ironically, Democrats think keeping these subsidies actually helps Republicans, because if they disappear, millions of people will get letters in the mail saying, "Surprise, your health insurance is about to get way more expensive," and that's the kind of thing that can swing an election year. But still, Republicans aren't budging. Democrats also want to undo some cuts to Medicaid, the health insurance program for the poorest Americans. Trump signed something called the Big Beautiful Bill in July that reduced Medicaid funding. Democrats want that money restored. The White House says their demands would add up to $1.5 trillion. That's 1,500,000,000,000,000, by the way. A lot of zeros. Now, here's what actually happens when the government shuts down. Workers get split into 2 categories: essential and non-essential. Essential workers like soldiers, border patrol agents, weather forecasters, air traffic controllers, and postal workers, they all get to keep working. But they don't get paid until the shutdown ends. Imagine being an air traffic controller responsible for keeping thousands of planes from colliding, but not knowing when your next paycheck's coming. That's what working by the good graces of their workers really means. Non-essential workers stay home. Thousands of people just don't go to work. When the shutdown ends, they get their paychecks retroactively, but in the meantime, they still have to pay rent, buy groceries, and keep the lights on, like we all do. Some services stop completely. When you visit Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon, sorry, national parks are closed. Need a small business loan? Not happening. Looking for a government grant to fix your home? Yeah, you're gonna have to wait for that. But not everything shuts down. Social Security, Medicare, and veterans benefits keep going because they're funded directly. So should we panic about the economy? Not really. According to Morgan Stanley, every week of a shutdown shrinks the economy by only 0.05 percent points. That last big one cost the economy $3 billion permanently, but that's just 0.02% of the yearly total. Hardly noticeable. Here's the wild part. On average, the stock market actually goes up during shutdowns. The S&P 500 usually rises by about 4.4%. Monica Guerra from Morgan Stanley says that's because other things like interest rates and global demand matter more to investors than the shutdown itself. Still, there's one major issue: the data blackout. With the Bureau of Labor Statistics offline, there are no jobs reports or inflation updates. None of the data the Federal Reserve uses to make decisions about interest rates. Private companies also rely on that information to invest. Romina Boccia from the Cato Institute says this couldn't come at a worse time. The economy's already shaky, and now it's like trying to drive in the dark with your headlights off. If you're outside the US, say in Australia, here's what this means for you. Good news, US consulates in Australia are still open and processing visas. Those offices run on fees, not government funding, but if you're visiting these states, expect a few annoyances. Closed parks, museums, and monuments, plus slower airport security and more flight delays because everyone's overworked. The shutdown also complicates international business. Trade talks, tariffs, even the AUKUS submarine deal with Australia could get messy. The Commerce Department has sent home 81% of its 43,000 workers. The Defense Department furloughed 45% of its 741,000 civilian employees, and the US Trade Representative's Office, the team that handles tariff negotiations, hasn't even published a plan for what to do during the shutdown. So when does this end? Jan Hatzius from Goldman Sachs says the key date to watch is October 15th. That's when military paychecks are due. Historically, that's when politicians start to feel real pressure to act. Remember how the last big shutdown ended? Air traffic controllers started calling in sick, not just one or two, dozens. LaGuardia Airport in New York had to shut down. Flights got delayed across the country. Suddenly, the shutdown wasn't just about politics, it was about regular people not being able to travel or get to work. Within hours, the government reopened. Experts like Boccia think the same thing could happen again. Federal workers can't go without pay forever. Once they start quitting or finding other jobs, the system cracks. And when that happens, Congress won't have much choice but to flip the switch back on.